Hey, what is going on, you guys? It is Monday, Marketing Monday, typically with Johanna Hunt, but we're doing things a little different today. I've got James here with me, and we are going to talk a little bit about how to get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Is it as easy as it sounds? Excited?
Oh, totally. Let's
Okay.
do it.
All right, let's do it. So guys, as you're hopping on, say hello. I am kicking off the 14-day challenge that I'm doing with our team. So I'm going to be going live every single day for 14 days with some of the best marketing tips that I have. Margaret, what's going on? But today I wanted to talk first about mindset, and I wanted to get us into a zone of getting some clarity on what it is that we actually want to achieve in our lives, whether that's a personal goal or whether that's a business goal. And is it as easy as it sounds? Because it seems like you could just say, hey, this is what I want. But I think a lot of people, when they think about what they want, there's actually a lot of fear and doubt that comes with it. And is it even achievable? And what inspired this conversation is I actually went through this process myself. And James and I met a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, well, maybe three or 4 weeks ago.
3 or 4 weeks ago. And had a great connection, and then we started talking. Hey, sister. We started talking a little bit about this, and he sent me a podcast that he'd done. And so when I was coming back from San Diego, I actually took some time, listened to the podcast, and heard his story, and it inspired me to reach out to him again and have a conversation. Anita, what's up? Because what have I done here? Because we were so much on a similar journey. And a couple of things really sparked for me. And one of the things he said was, you don't have to have it all figured out to take the first step. Like figuring out what it is you want, and then the why will present itself. And we know this. Like we read about this, we hear about this. It's a conversation that we have. But something about it just really, I don't know if it was the timing or what it was. It just struck me. And yeah, I was excited for us to do a live on it and talk a little bit more and dive a little bit deeper. So that's my introduction.
Nice.
James.
Well done.
Yeah, and you know what, guys? I rarely actually do a dual interview or a broadcast where I actually have somebody sitting in my house next to me. So this is kind of fun and exciting.
Yeah, hey, let's do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about impacting others, right? That's what we're here for.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to let James share a little bit about his story, but he is with Leap Zone Strategies.
That's right.
And that is his business, is coaching. So share a little bit about your background.
Yeah.
Here, I'll sit back and let you.
That's all good. Yeah, so James Gardner. I am a performance coach with a company called Leap Zone Strategies. We are a branding, marketing, and coaching company. And we work with small business owners, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, working on their personal brand and their business brands, elevating them in all facets of their business, from performance to positioning to personality, the message and the congruence, at the nucleus of really before the even logo and website kind of even come into fruition. Who are you about? What are you about? What do you want, which is clarity, which is really what this conversation is about today.
Yeah, huge on clarity. Who would love some clarity? Drop us some flame emojis in the comments. Flames.
Fire it up.
Fire it up. If clarity is what you're seeking, because I really think that is the first step, is getting clear on what you want.
Yeah.
And not even asking yourself, is what I want possible? But it's just allowing yourself permission to want what you want. And that's one of the things that came up in our conversation was I was thinking of all these roadblocks about who I am and is what I want actually achievable, and what does that look like? And you said to me, well, you just have to get creative.
Yeah.
Did you say that or did I say that?
Well, no, I think we both said it,
Yeah.
in different semantical versions of that. But yeah, it's first off, it's awareness. So, you had a burning awareness that something wasn't sitting right. I needed to make a change. I'm not sure if I have the courage. I don't even know what that change looks like. But you were aware that something was out of alignment.
Yeah.
And same thing for myself and the journey that I've gone through is there was this burning underlying kind of catalyst of something needs to change and I don't know what it is. So once I had that awareness, then it was like, how do I get clear? And we talk about clarity and we all know, I want to live a Wi-Fi lifestyle. that's not being clear, right? Being clear is doing what we call the deep work, right? You need to go and do the deep work to get beyond that superficial clarity. Really, what is at the roots, the anchor of what the essence of what you're all about, and really getting to that, and then from the inside out, starting to let it permeate through, right? And I think that's kind of what you can share with what your journey was. My journey was the same, in a sense that I had achieved a lot of things. I wasn't happy. I know I needed something more. I was letting societal pressures and other people's viewpoints basically dictate
Guilty.
what I thought I wanted to do, right? And first off, we all know those people, we can't be around that vibration, right? I mean, the naysayers, if there's naysayers out there that are around you, then you need to tuck them away and surround yourself with, high vibes of the highway is what I say.
Yeah.
Right?
People who give you permission to be you, like your
That's right.
authentic self. And,
That's right.
that was one of the conversations we had too. A lot of the fear I had around deciding, hey Adam, what's going on? A lot of the fear I had around deciding the kind of lifestyle that I wanted to have, and, like the shifts that I wanted to make at this point in my life, I had a lot of fear around, like, well, what are my responsibilities and my titles, and what are people going to think about me being somebody who is making myself a priority? Like, I'm not a typical mother, and what does that even mean, right? And we had that conversation, and he's like, who says you have to be a typical mother? What is that even?
I'm not a typical dad.
Just having, no, that's exactly what you said. You're like, I'm not a typical dad. And I was like, I love that you said that, because you just opened up the truth for me to feel like I have this safe space to say, I'm not a typical mom, and I don't want to live a typical lifestyle. Whatever that means. What does typical mean anyways, right? What is normal? I'm going to bring this a little closer to us. I feel like it's really far away. And when you get around people like that who give you the permission to live bigger, to just be really honest with yourself about what it is you want, it's very liberating. It's extremely liberating. That's what kind of inspired this conversation too. So we were mentioning not having to have it all figured out in order to take the first steps, and that, there's this idea that momentum is leaps and bounds. Typical is freaking boring. I agree. So there's a misconception that it's leaps and bounds, and that in order to make changes, you have to make these radical shifts. You have to have it all figured out. For me, the goal has always been to live between two places. I grew up in California. I have family in Austria. It was always my desire to create a lifestyle where I could be in two places and have that space. And I'm like, well, how am I going to make that work? Is that even possible? And after our conversation, James actually reached out to me and was like, hey, I'm going to be in Vancouver. If you're not either in Paris or San Diego by next week. And I'm like, it's funny that you say that, because I just booked a trip to Paris and I just decided to go back to California after our conversation. He's like, holy shit, woman, you move fast.
Get shit done.
But then a matter of days, it was so clear to me on what I wanted to do. And a lot of people have messaged me and they're like, what do you mean you're going back to California? Are you going to live there? How long are you going to be there for? And I'm like, what? I don't know. I don't know. I know I'll be in Paris and Brussels for a week in Europe. And I know that I will be back in California. I'm going to spend some time with friends and family. I don't know where I'm staying yet. I don't have a car yet. I don't have a plan. And it is actually probably the best I've felt in longer than I can remember. Because for me, when nothing changes, and I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that level of certainty in my life that there won't be any evolution and that the things that I want won't exist.
Yeah, and her experience is an example of once you do get clear, the roadblocks vanish. And then you jump into that flow state, and then it just happens.
It does.
It just happens. And so I'm in a transition right now too, where I'm heading back east to take care of family affairs, you know, with my folks that are kind of moving on and towards the end of their life. And it just kind of, I was clear that I this is how I'm going for 2 weeks, and I didn't know how I was getting there. I didn't know how I'm getting from Boston to Rhode Island, and I knew that I wanted to have business meetings out there and meet some people and reconnect, and it's like I look now and I'm like, I just designed this. It just designed by itself, in a sense, because just became clear on this is what I want to happen. What is my intention for that time away, right? And then I give it attention with a little sprinkle of love and everything we do, and it's magic. Right?
Yeah.
And you don't need to have all the answers. That's the key.
Yeah. But you know, it's so interesting how things start to open up, because once I made this decision, like, all of a sudden I'm meeting all these amazing people from Southern California. I'm expanding my network. People are coming across my path. Like, I'm being drawn to a certain place in a certain time. Like, the things with Europe are opening up for me to go there. Like, I wasn't sure if I was going to go and how it was going to work and the timing and if I'd have the energy. And then I just said, well, do I want to go or don't I? Yes, I want to go. And that was it. And then it's all just kind of things that started to happen with the trip to California. You know, I run an Airbnb in Europe, and the gal who works with me over there and hosts, she's like, why don't you start an Airbnb in Southern California? Like, the ideas are just starting to propel, right? And these conversations are coming up where the how is starting to present itself now that I've gotten clear on the what and just given myself permission to want what I want. And there's so much power in that. It seems so simple, but it's not, because we're so conditioned to think we have to do things a certain way in order for it to work, and we have to have it all figured out. We need a 5-year plan, we need a 10-year plan. Yes, if you have a business, you should definitely have a strategic plan in place to reach your goals, and you should be following a guideline. But when it comes to deciding what you want your life to look like in 5 years from now or 10 years from now, sometimes it's taking the first step. And it's funny, because I was actually afraid to ask for what I want, and we ended up having I ended up having a conversation with Cam about, you know, what that looks like for us and for the kids and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, well, what if I decide that I want to stay there long term, right? And he's like, well, why don't we figure it out at that time? Like, let's just figure out the first steps. And we started to get creative about, okay, we were together for 12 years, we have kids, we have all these things going on. How do we get creative so that he can have the life he wants, I can have the life I want, our kids can be happy? We could do things the way most people do. And you don't get what you want when you do it that way, you know? Like, you need to really think creatively, and
that's where the spark comes from.
Yeah.
Once you have that mind shift of, okay, I'm going to make this happen, and how can I be creative to make it happen? You know, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the main things, as you talked about momentum, is we get lost sometimes in thinking that they have to be these big needle movers, right? These big epic things, and no, you know, at LeapZone we use the term catalyst tasks. There are, strategically in business, we design these small little needle movers, right? Because those generate the first step or the second step, or when we're at a plateau and it's like, how do we keep going? And sometimes you need to just do those simple very next step. What is the very next step? And sometimes it's not earth-shattering. You know, it could be for you, you know, with the amazing content that you come up with, sometimes it's you just going for a walk, right? It's just something that stimulates and bridges the gap and brings you back around, right?
Somebody commented in on a post I did when I made that decision to make this move, and they said to me, like, you know, I wish I could be more like you. You're so motivated to live your life the way you want. I'll tell you, I have felt so low energy over the last few months because I've felt this unalignment, and that unalignment takes a lot of energy out of you. And it takes a lot of energy to create alignment too, but either way, you're putting that energy out, you know? Like, whatever you're doing, if you're maintaining the status quo, that's hard. That takes energy. If you're doing something completely different and you're living your life in alignment, that takes energy too, but there's a different type of energy. Like the minute I got clear on what I wanted, I started to get excited, and suddenly I had the energy to start moving the pieces forward and what I needed to do, because I'm inspired now. Like the action that I'm taking is inspired. I'm not working to pay the bills. I'm not working to maintain the mundane of every day. Like I am working towards, you know, and we started talking, we had coffee this morning and we were talking about like, what's the next step? And I'm like, okay, well, first it was just spending the next like 3 months in California. And I'm like, who knows? Maybe I'll fly to the south of France, or maybe maybe I'll go to Australia. Like there's lots of things that I want to do in that time, and to just like suddenly the ball has started to roll and the ideas are starting to come and the possibilities seem endless. But it started with that one single decision.
And would you say that in those 3 months leading up to this mindset shift, if you will, you know, when we're going and we're pushing, like we know something's out of alignment, but we push to get back into alignment.
Oh yeah.
Right? And what's happening now is, and I think you and I, when we were walking back, we talked about, it's just, we're in this flow state, you know, where nothing's really changed. You know, objectively, nothing's changed except we've just had a mind shift, right? We've changed our inner story and our perception. We've become clear, and now everything we do is effortless in a sense.
It's so true.
Right?
I have been pushing with this like need to make things happen, need to make things shift. Just because I've been fighting, like, what is the clarity? And I've been fighting kind of against what I actually want, too. And so there's been this, what's the word I'm looking for? This resistance.
Friction? Yeah, okay.
Definitely some friction. There's been this level of resistance for me. It's like everything has been more difficult than it needs to be, because I've been fighting this internal battle in my mind of, like, what I want, what I think is possible. No, that's not okay. You're not allowed to have that. No, that's, you know, maybe that's for some people, or maybe that's like years down the road you can have that. So there's all this resistance, like everything I've been doing. I should turn off my notifications. Everything I've been doing has felt like so much effort, and it's left me really drained. And so now I've been letting go of that how. And really thinking to myself, you know what, it doesn't really matter. Like focusing on the present, what I can do today to move towards that. Yeah. And I think like some of the other things we talked about is, you know, what do you need in order to decide on what you want? Like, you know, a lot of people think it takes strength and courage and confidence. Let's talk about like the order of those things, because I think a lot of times we see somebody doing something and we're like, well, that it's easy for them. They're so confident. Like, they're confident doing live video. They're confident talking to people. They're confident in making decisions. And we think that they're born with it, or it's just something that they come by naturally, or they're just a strong person. They're just somebody who has courage. So let's talk about the order of those things.
Would you like me to begin?
Yeah.
Okay. Because, all right, well, I feel very strongly for myself, and this is how I operate by design, is I feel very strongly that once we have an awareness of something needs to change, I think courage is the first step to really stimulate action forward, whether it's the baby step or the strategy of what it even looks like. Having the courage to be comfortable in the skin of not being typical parents, right? Or having the courage to say, hey, I want to live in Europe 3 months out of the year, and I want to do this and do that.
Or courage to say, I'm not happy.
Well, right.
Like that alone takes huge courage to just admit the fact that, you know what, I'm not happy doing what I'm doing, or I want something different.
Yeah.
You know, just allowing yourself to be and feel
and
those things.
And I think, yeah, and you know, see, it's really hard to really define what is the pecking order of steps. Because I do think it's subjective to the individual that goes through the journey. But we talked a lot about the power of surrender, right? And I think for you, when you hit that point of surrender, then all of a sudden the courage kind of came. So it's one of those dances, right? We know that vulnerability and surrender can yield strength, and it does. And strength, I guess, can be a form of courage, right? It's kind of, in a sense, a byproduct or the same as courage in a sense. The strength, the inner fortitude to make a change, to want to facilitate something like that. And then it's, I think next is there needs to be some consistent commitment. We need to, we stay in the flow state. Right now we're in the flow state, her and I, let's say, in our individual journeys, if you will. And that doesn't mean that we don't have days where we're like, ugh. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Like Saturday, if you watched my stories, I was really struggling to be in the flow. Like I had chocolate for dinner, and everything I was trying, I was like, just felt like I was banging my head against a wall. But I stuck with it. There's times where you take a step back, and there's times where you stick with it, and then you will get into that flow. Like, it is our job to put ourselves into a flow state. It's our job to put ourselves into creating energy. Like, if I'm tired, I need to go and create energy, right? Like, it's not just going to come by me sitting and waiting for it. It's going to come from me and going and generating it on a treadmill, having a conversation, getting out into the fresh air, doing what you need to do to create and maintain. And sometimes you have to do that multiple times in a day. You've got to find what it is that creates that for you.
And sometimes it's just a simple conversation, and being surrounded by like-minded individuals, right?
Yeah, because energy is everywhere. It's everywhere, right? Like, you just have to reach out and grab it and create it. And it's the same thing. I think a lot of people think it takes inspiration to do something. I always say inspiration lasts as long as a bath, because really, like, if you don't take action on your inspiration immediately, that inspiration can die really quickly. And then you go back to your normal state until you have that next spark of inspiration. So we even talked about it. We almost hopped on a live actually on Friday. I was like, inspired action?
I know, right?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I know.
Let's do it while we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so then let's talk about moving from like strength and courage to confidence. And I know that's a long conversation. And I hear it all the time when people with clients that are starting a business or revamping or stepping out on the stage and going into a different realm, component of what they do. I don't have the confidence. I struggle with finding that. And it's not, confidence is not some elusive Da Vinci code of you have to have it and you have to find this secret sauce. It's all around us, and everyone on this call, I mean, guaranteed, each and every one of the people that are watching this, they have their own residual confidence inside. I call it residual confidence. It's like their bank. You all have had win moments, right? Where we put ourselves out there, where we stepped out on the stage, and sometimes we need to remind ourselves, and that's getting back to the deep work, is what can you do and to even relive some of those moments. And I'll give you an example. So one tool that I've used in the past, which now a lot of my clients use, is keeping a confidence log. So when I first started this kind of transition about 3 years ago, I started to kind of write down, part of my journaling was to write down excerpts from my past. Didn't matter if it was yesterday or 30 years ago. Wins, like where I exuded confidence. Because I knew that I was going to need to draw upon this. And sometimes they would just be little taglines, and then sometimes it might be a page or two, right? From different things. And now, as part of my architecture week to week, I have moments during the week where I just go through, and it's a full journal now, and I just pick out random things, and I realign myself when I showed confidence at a certain time in my life. I love that. Do you guys do that? Let's see some hearts or some thumbs up. Do you have like a confidence journal? I actually do something similar. I do like I have little albums in my phone, almost like a visual board, and I'll have like rank advancements that I've had, or summits I've been part of, or I even have, like, when I get positive feedback, many of you, I have snapshots of comments that you've made in my feed, or messages that you've sent me after something I've posted, or some results you've had from something I've taught. I snapshot all of those and I put them into an album. And when I'm feeling like I need to realign with what it is I do, or I'm not feeling that inspiration, or I'm kind of like having one of those days where I just don't know where to begin, maybe I'm feeling low confidence, I haven't had a great night of sleep, or something's rocked my foundation, I go into those albums and I look at the impact that I've been able to make by doing what I do, and that inspires me. Or I pick up a book and I just start reading. James is asking me, where, like, do you plan your content? Do you pre-write your content, or do you mostly just post in the moment? And a lot of it comes from what I'm doing in the moments. Like, if I'm having a conversation and it inspires something that I think somebody will get value from, that's when I post it. If I read a book and it sparks something in me and it triggers like a strong emotion or an aha, I'm going to take it and I'm going to share that, but with my personal perspective, because I feel like people will get value from it. So there's lots of different ways to drive that, like, energy and that confidence when you're not feeling that way yourself. Because most of us don't wake up every single day. Like, we do have days where we wake up and we're just not feeling it.
Right.
It's called being human.
That's right. And it's okay. And giving yourself permission to accept that is a very powerful and liberating thing.
Yeah.
We don't, as humans, we don't always have to be on. Like, we want to be, as one of my friends and dear friends and colleagues says, epic humans. Like, we always want to wake up every day and put on our epic human suit. And it's not always feasible, and we have to do our best in giving ourselves permission to have those down days, to recharge. Especially, when you're in a profession where we're constantly giving out too, right? That's the nature of what we do, and we love it, and it inspires us, and yet we do need to recharge our batteries.
Yeah.
Right? So...
that wasn't on my notes, but let's talk a little bit about that real quick. Let's talk about, like, how do you fill your own cup? How do you... because a lot of people on here are influencers, marketers, coaches, fitness professionals, like, pouring into other people quite often. So what are some of the tools and things to keep that going?
Yeah, I really advocate what we call a winning ritual, and we design this at Leap Zone for all of our clients. It's a non-negotiable. What does that look like for each individual person? But it's their time. And it's usually morning time, and it's their time where they're not on social media, they're not doing their email triage, they're not doing any of that shit. They're just focusing inward. And I do this as well, of course. And I find when I consistently do that day in and day out, I'm less likely to have that tipping point of going and having the whole day where I'm just like, fuck, I need to check out, However, when I deviate, because I am human, and we don't always follow our best advice sometimes, right? We get caught up and traveling and this and that, and so when I deviate, it's like a snowball effect, and all of a sudden it starts to surface, and I sense it coming. It's like, oh shit, and then I try to make a pivotal shift and correct, and sometimes it bites me in the ass, and then it's like, yeah, before you know it, I'm on the couch watching Netflix all day because I just need to binge watch a series just to recover. So I try to be proactive towards that. So, and what does that look like? It depends on each of you, right? For me, right now I do. I'm kind of into Stoicism, so I do Ryan Holiday's Daily Stoic. So I have a little excerpt to read every day. I have my morning meditation time. I always do an intention of the day. Always, how do I want the day to go? And sometimes it's motivational videos, things like that. Not always, 4 or 5 times a week, I throw in a fitness component to that, right?
So it's a balance of energy in and energy out, information in and information out. Because this is what I find, I used to start my days just purely with personal development. mostly that was taking information in, and a lot of people will binge on personal development. They're just, we talked about this.
We talked a lot. I know.
I think we've stopped talking.
We got a whole show here, a series for you coming.
Yeah.
Trust me.
But yeah, we talked about like personal development. There's a book that says like if how-tos were enough, we'd all be rich, skinny, and happy. Because you can read all the books in the world, but really you have to do the other practices too. And, you know, I mean, I coach people, they come in, they get so excited about the level of content and training that we have inside of our team group that they just go to town on it. And I always set a precedence as they're getting started and they're launching. I'm like, look, you're going to want to dive in and dive deep into all of this training. Don't do it. Resist the urge. Because you're going to get analysis paralysis, and it's easy to do that in our lives, and you take in so much and you get so overwhelmed.
It's true.
There is going to be a book coming out with all my sayings.
It's going to be a coffee book. I get royalties on this one.
Yeah. I'm going to outsource that to you. I got enough to do, you know? Paris, California.
True.
So I have found in switching my morning routine around, instead of just taking information in, actually that's the last thing I do. I start with meditation and prayer. For me, prayer is something that I've always had in my life. It looks different than it used to, and it has always evolved and changed, but it is around gratitude. It's asking for strength. It's asking for courage. It's asking for surrender. Those are some of the things that bring me a strong sense of inner peace and faith in that what is going to be will be, regardless of, like, I can only control so much of the things that I want in my life, and allowing me to let go. So prayer's been really great for that, and then meditation is really just getting myself into that flow state, letting go, connecting with my body, my breath, and that clarity that I need. And then like gratitude, affirmation.
Yeah.
Affirmation, really important. This was something that was in a group recently where I joined in on the conversation, and it really being around affirming what it is you want, but also bringing in a component of you will have this because of. So for example, somebody asked me to give an example, and it was, I will be a 6-figure earner because of the value that I provide for my audience. Like, that's a generalization, but allowing your brain to actually answer a question of why will you be this because you do this, and really getting yourself into like that action. So affirmations is a big one. It's that talking to yourself more than you listen to yourself, because yourself will tell you all sorts of stuff, right? But you can retrain your brain. So those are some of my practices. And then fitness.
Yeah. Wellness component, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole mind thing, that whole rewiring our habitual patterns, and that's really now the new landscape of personal development. Right? There's so much there, and the affirmations, it's super powerful. How do we rewire? When we want to change, it takes work, and it takes repetitive, consistent behavior to change those thought patterns, especially in this day and age. A lot of us have been brought up with some negative, fear-based thought patterns, and that's the subconscious mind is such a powerful entity, and it's a great weapon to use when we know how to use it.
Yeah. Right,
and we can activate it, and all this, what we're talking about here, really is going towards activating that and rewiring and creating these new belief systems, right? And anchoring that with emotion. Because at the end of the day, when we visualize, when we affirm, it has to be anchored in an emotional context.
Yeah.
Right? It can't just be all intellectual, right? There has to be, what does it really mean? What does it feel like? What would it feel like for you to be in Paris in 3 weeks? Mm-hmm. I'm sure that gets you all warm and fuzzy, right? Like,
all I have to do is go back and look through my Instagrams, and I'm mentally checked out and already there. Yeah. We talked about that a little bit actually today. I talked about back when I used to work on yachts, and on my days off where I had the whole boat to myself, I would lay on the deck and drink rosé and pretend like it was my boat. Talk about visualization at its finest. I won't tell you what else I was doing.
Was it spritzer in the left hand or the right hand?
Both.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, and you know, I think it is, again, like when it comes to deciding what it is that you want, it's that clarity, right? First, but when it comes to reforming those thought patterns and like rewiring all that stuff, creating new habits, it's first that awareness, like being aware of the language that you're using, the people you're surrounding yourself with, how you're spending your day, like really bringing awareness to like, what is it that I'm doing now? And if I want these things, what do I need to shift? Like, what are those small shifts that I need to make?
And ultimately, what are you trying to do? Well, each of us have just recently, through work recently, changed the frequency on the radio dial. You know, that's what you're doing. How do I'm at this station. This station doesn't serve me, right? I want to get on a different frequency, and really, it is that frequency is ultimately a higher level frequency, right? Because it's an alignment and it serves us, and serving us depends on all of us, right? What subjectively, however, the secret sauce is it needs to be a higher frequency. There needs to be a higher energy out to higher energy in. Support, so surrounding yourself, right? Because it's a ripple effect. What goes out comes back. You know, and for people that are struggling with a variety of life choices or smaller non-life defining choices, but you know, who are you surrounded by? That's a big thing too, you know.
100%. I have to say my circle of influence and the people I spend the most of my time with has changed drastically in the last couple of years, in the last decade. I mean, it is a constant evolution. We even talked about this because we were talking about our travels. So we're both Americans living in Canada.
Don't hold that against us.
Both trying to figure out why the heck we left the warm weather. Have lived in multiple places, and we were talking about, well, did you keep in touch with these people in these different walks of life that we've had? Like when I was back in the ski resorts and in yachting and all these different experiences I've had in my life before Facebook, actually probably a good thing. And I'm like, no, I didn't. But I think I kept in touch with the people that I wanted to keep in touch with, where I really felt that connection. And but it's evolved over time. And you said the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in New York and LA for 14 years total between the two cities. 12 years in New York City and 2 in LA. And there's so many people that I just, I didn't keep in contact with. And I wish I did, because there were some really amazing people. I do have some contacts in LA that probably over the last 3 or 4 years I've reached out to and reestablished. So,
which I will be connecting with.
Yeah, that's right.
When I go to Southern California.
Totally. No problem. And and each one of those as you just said, reestablished contacts for myself are people that I genuinely want to be connected with. It's not necessarily just a nostalgia thing, because there's people from New York back in the day, and I'm like, oh, it'd be great just to see how they're doing. That doesn't mean that there's that deep connection, and the ones that I've reestablished with, there is that deep connection. We've gone through something together, and they're of like-minded peeps, so to speak, right?
Connection is extremely important, and especially nowadays with all the apps and the technology that we have and the social media, it's easy to be connected and be completely disconnected. But really, like the inspiration, that energy that we've been talking about, that clarity, that comes from having conversations with people who are on that same frequency as you, who are on that vibration. And there's we're all here to learn from each other and have those conversations. I feel so lucky because, there was a time in my life where I was surrounded with a lot of people who maybe were inspired by what I was doing. Some didn't believe it was possible. Some wanted nothing to do with my journey, did not support it whatsoever. like those friendships kind of went along the wayside. And now I feel like I can have a conversation and truly be my authentic self and be like own who I am in this space and time with the people that I surround myself with without any sort of fear of judgment, but actually people who are like, hell yeah. I got a message from a girlfriend of mine yesterday. She's actually the person who introduced me to network marketing 8 years ago, and we have always had an incredible connection. We met through a friend and we stayed in touch over the years, and she voice clips me on WhatsApp, and she's like, I mean, how incredibly cool is it, Johanna? You're living downtown in Vancouver, like you've got a rockin' business, you've got a rockin' lifestyle, you're about to jet set to Europe. Like a couple of months ago, you were telling me there was something that you wanted, like you wanted to make this transition, you wanted to go home, and then you were like, how is this even possible? How is it gonna happen? And now you're doing it, and you don't even know how it's possible. You made this shift and you made this decision, and she's like, I can't wait to see what's happening next. Those are the kind of people you want to have in your circle who are cheering you on and telling you like, yeah, go for it, and those, you give people permission to also go for it when you make that permission for yourself. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Is that a mic drop?
That was a mic drop. I mean, that really,
You guys feeling inspired? Give us some hearts. Give us some flame emojis.
With some love.
Give
some
us some
fiery
love.
love.
Okay, so you know what? I'm going to close out, but how do people find you? How do they follow along for more inspiration and tips and coaching?
Yeah, well, feel free to search me out on Facebook, James Gardner. At Can Ordinary Inspire is my Facebook. You can also find us at Leap Zone Strategies, leapzonestrategies.com, Leap Zone Strategies Facebook. The two ladies that own the company are an amazing, soul-inspiring individuals. Just talk about trailblazers and life crushers, and just elevating those around. And so I'm really in just a very fortunate place to be in, and meeting epic people like you, and strike up a conversation. One thing that drew me to Joe was, as I said the other day or yesterday, was your conversations, right? Like even in your posts, it's as if you're having a conversation with written content, and that goes a long way. And it's somewhat of not a dying art form, but it's not prevalent. People hide behind things too easy, or people can now just step up and preach, and that's not it. It's authentic communication, right? So I would love to engage with any of you authentically as well, and I'm sure this won't be the last of, what do we call it, the J&J? What was it?
J&J, Brace for Impact.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Which also inspired me to start moving forward on a podcast idea that I've had for a long time, that I was going to put on a back burner, and then I was like, no, this doesn't belong on a back burner. Like the conversations that I'm having right now with people that I'm meeting and coming across in this path right now, like these conversations have to be shared.
There you go. Speaking of which, can I do a shameless plug for my
Yeah, of course.
The podcast that she opened with.
Shameless though.
Shameless. But hey, authentic shameless. No. Obstacle Course Podcast. Obstacle Course Podcast. It's found on all the platforms, YouTube, Spotify, etc. I think it's obstaclecourse.com. I don't remember.
We'll drop a link for you.
But episode 45, it's my life story from weak asthmatic kid to New York to LA, hobnobbing with celebrities, being destitute, going through a life-changing family situation, and sitting on the couch next to Johanna. So rock and roll. There we go.
Yeah. Definitely check it out. If you're just hopping on, definitely go back. Hey, Bad. Go back and catch the replay from the beginning. Let us know where you're tuning in from. If you share the broadcast, make sure you let us know that you shared the broadcast. Definitely connect with James. I've tagged him in this video, so you can go over and friend him up. I think you'll get a lot of value there. Somebody who has fully lived lots of different aspects of life, who you can learn a lot about fitness and mindset and coaching and just living.
Life.
Like that is That is the ultimate goal, is living, not getting so busy making a living that you forget to live your life.
Right?
Yeah.
Living in high definition, as I like to say, every day. Let's do it.
Unfiltered.
Unfiltered and in high def. There we go.
Right on, you guys. Thank you
right.
so much for tuning in today. Look forward to the next 13 days of sharing some epic stuff with you. All things marketing, personal development, all that good stuff. Tips and business tips and stuff like that, you know where you can find me, but johannahunt.ca. There's some great content over there. I'm looking forward. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks for making time for us, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.